and welcome to the Lighten Up podcast with Lauren Polly, your invitation for living on the lighter side of life. I am Lauren Polly, and I am delighted you have chosen to join me today for episode 201, Becoming the You You've Always Wanted to Be. This is actually the 100th episode of this delightful podcast, and I am just so enthusiastic to see where it's grown, where it's spread. I'm very grateful for all of you who repeatedly tune in and spread the love, so to speak, by passing it along to your friends and family. How does it get any better than that? And I wonder where we can go from here. I love everything life creation folks focused, generative self-expansion, and I just feel like there's a big opening right now regardless of the times that we're in. I know right now in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, people feel very heavy, very stuck, kind of looking around at this limited choices that you have to actually move and groove and create, and so much of that is such the opposite of what this show is all about, but also what the universe actually promises as a possibility. It's funny, it's kind of this mirror of how most of us have been living our lives and how most of us have been going about changing things in our lives, becoming, evolving, and growing, where we are taught time and time again in this reality that it's through the hard work, it's through the deep self-study, it's through kind of digging through every little possible problem that you have and trying to flip it over and over and over again until it can finally move. It's kind of that same feeling that I'm actually perceiving a lot right now with this pandemic, where I have to keep pushing at this thing because there's really not a lot of space or a lot of choice to do much else right now. And again, this is such an opposite of what actually creates and what this show is all about. I went back to read the show write-up that I wrote about 2 years ago and started to look at like, wow, the wording that I had come up of like truly lightness is the thing that changes. It's actually bringing clarity and depth to the heart of the matter. So you're not floating on the surface. You're not going kind of like willy-nilly about it. You're not being airy-fairy or putting a lipstick on the pig, but you're actually going to the heart of the matter of it with a non-significance, with a lightness, and with a relaxed space that actually allows the things in your life to have enough breathing room to actually start to move and groove and shift and change. Regardless of where you are right now in your personal life, your professional life, your business development, what have you, what is it that you have been pushing at a little too much? Where have you been putting in more work than is necessary? Where have you been putting in more effort and more fight and more push than is necessary? And where have you perhaps adopted this mindset that there are limited choices right now because the world's a little bit shut down? And where do you function from that just on a baser point of view of like, wow, I only have these few options to choose from. I have to keep pushing at it if anything's going to change. I'd invite you, especially in this conversation, to actually allow that to start to flip. Take a beat, take a breath, feel your feet on the floor, actually get present here in this moment, and dig a little bit deeper. If there weren't just a few options for you, but there were multiple choices, a multiplicity of possibilities at your fingertips, you just had to be relaxed enough to open your awareness, to receive them, and then take that golden nugget of action to actually bring it about. What would be different in your life? And what is it that's actually desiring to shift and to grow and to kind of rewrite your story thus far in this time period? That now, if you actually allowed yourself to relax around it, would actually start moving on itself. That's another really cool nugget that I love to play with, is that energy is never stuck. It's never solid. It is actually, in its essence, ever moving, ever changing. It's our points of view that stick it. It's our definitions that stick it. It's the thing of like, well, I finally got something I like. I have to hold on for dear life. Or, oh my goodness, I hate this and I kind of have to push it away. But by doing that, I actually create more of it. There is this powerful creative mobility that comes from relaxing around your quote unquote problems. or those stagnant spots in your life that you would love to change, but just can't quite cognitively figure out anything right now to take action on. You're not getting a clear hit. But what if you could relax a little bit around it and actually allow that energy to move and shift on its own? And what could your allowance for that and your receiving of that actually create for you in the future? So many of us are living a life that is so full of stress. Our mind is so busy. Our bodies are so tight. And we end up going through life like checking off little boxes, like accomplish that, accomplish that, accomplish that. Whoops, screw that one up. Before you know it, you're kind of like scorecarding yourself through an existence. That's not really living. And most of us know that there's a possibility beyond all that. We just don't really have the tools and the techniques and the kind of the beat and that relaxed space to actually allow it to start to show itself to you and to kind of put in your conscious co-creative effort into that. One of my favorite tools in terms of the lightness is really from the beautiful system Access Consciousness, which you've been hanging around the show for a while. You've heard me talking about. It's following the lightness. So whatever makes you feel light, spacious, relaxed, and also that kind of like pop of interest where you kind of go, what's that? Those are the things that actually create for you. The things that feel heavy and like compressed on you and the things that squish your space, those are the things that actually don't create for you. They're not true for you. What's true for you always makes you feel lighter. And it's so fascinating because if you actually look at this conversation we've been having about changing and becoming the you you've always desired to be and actually having that life and that living, how often do you go into the heaviness thinking that that's a way to the lightness? You dive headfirst into what is heavy, the problems, the uh-ohs, the stagnant spots, and you try to bring lightness to that. This is, again, how we're taught to create, but again, it's the opposite of what actually will be generative for you. What if moving forward, even just for this week for practice, you actually allowed yourself to lay down the heaviness? And you challenged yourself that every time you went into that old pattern of like, that's heavy, I'm going to go into it to hopefully bring some lightness to it, thinking that will move it, thinking that will actually move me forward. You actually went, wait a second, no, that's heavy. That's not true for me. What's light right now? And you actually retrained your energy that way. You retrained your choice that way as well. Choosing for the lightness, even if it's non-cognitive or looks a bit weird and wacky from the outside, will actually start to generate your life in that way. How do you lighten up? You choose what's light for you. You continually go into the lightness. You don't go into the darkness thinking that light will come. And a lot of that actually comes from your perspective. I talk a lot about mental health, and a lot of people look at me like, wow, you're very light and playful for someone who talks about like suicide and depression and mental angst. And I always think that's so funny. Because for me, talking on those subjects, there's such a lightness to it. There isn't a significance from what I've been through in my life. If you've read my award-winning book, The Other Side of Bipolar, you know I've been through ups and downs and big, big ways with that. But there's something beautiful about actually being really present and really honest with what's going on. And with that, not making it so heavy and so dramatic that it won't change, but actually allowing it to go, okay, this is it. This is what is right now, what I've chosen, what I've created. Now, from here, if I was able to relax around it, not fight it, not push at it, not work hard, relaxed around it, and allow that to open up. And from here, not running away, not reacting, but actually looking at what was light to choose next. And I started actually making conscious choices that way in terms of my treatment, my body, my relationships, how my life on the outside was looking and how that was impacting the life that I perceived on the inside. It actually is quite a light subject. You may find yourself too drawn to create things that may from the outside look heavy, like you're going into the heaviness to bring on change. I just invite you to really look at that for yourself. Is it that you're making it heavy? Or is it that it's a heavy topic for other people, but because you have a different perspective, it's actually light for you to go and create that? So it's a fascinating thing to start to look at what is heavy, what is light, and without anyone else's points of view, without what should be or what has to be, actually being honest with yourself of, you know what, that may not make sense to anybody else, but to me, there's a spark there. There's an interest. There's something pulling. Okay, I'm going to go for it. Talking about becoming the you you've always desired to be, a lot of us sometimes we'll have pictures that go with it, and then we create those pictures and we go, but that doesn't really fulfill me the way I thought it would. Uh-oh. More than those pictures and deeper underneath all that, we have a sense of how we would like to be living our life. And it's those senses that really drive us into those success makers. To be able to actually start retraining yourself to not go for that picture, but to actually have a sense of, okay, those things, I like to be relaxed, I like to have more money, I'd like to just feel supported, to be cared about. There's different senses that you can start to get and go, okay, that's actually what I'd like my life to be. By guiding yourself that direction, by again following the lightness of that, you take in and you actually start to unfurl that becoming process. Becoming you isn't about matching those pictures of perfections or checking off the things on your scorecard of success. It's actually looking at those senses of, wow, when I'm like that, there's such a sense of peace, possibility, and lightness. There's such a sense of me there. That's what I'm going for. It's so much more about the journey and the path of becoming than it is this outward thing that we like to do where we start to try to achieve things or reach the finish line. I love the saying, it's all about the journey, and I know it's very prosaic, but at the same time, it's super true. And if you actually can look back at the end of all this and go, you know what, this entire life journey that I've taken on, this entire ups and downs and around the bends and off the beaten path and back on the beaten path and going places that no one thought I would go or could go or should go, it's actually led to a beautifully lit up path for me. And personally, that's something that I look at of like, if I'm on my deathbed at the end of my life, I can look back at all this and go, it may not have made cognitive sense to anybody else, but that path that I chose to take, that I chose to blaze and trail for myself, that in of itself, that was a becoming. That was an unfurling of my being. And more than anything, it was planting the seeds of the possibilities that I know, that I cherish, and that I choose to actually nurture in my life for me and those around me. It's a very different energy, and it's a very different possibility that we're speaking about here. Becoming the you desire to be, lightening up. It's all about actually that. It is the lightening up. It's not all of these other things that we've been taught or trained around. And if you've been struggling with anything mental, emotional, or even outward, financial, business-wise, all of those kind of stuck things that we create for ourselves and all of those uphill battles, I am just wondering if you can take the energies in this episode. You can take this simple tool of following the lightness, and you took that beautiful challenge of looking at your viewpoints and going, am I going into the heaviness here, desiring to bring lightness to it? Or am I going into something that other people go, wow, that's a heavy topic, but actually I have lightness around because I know there's a creative possibility here. If you're willing to go outside the box and actually start trekking and kind of like laying breadcrumbs for yourself along the way, along your path forward, I wonder what you would create. And truly, that is the gift of the show. If you are new to it, welcome, and take a look and a peek back at the preceding 100 episodes. You'll find all sorts of tidbits and beautiful openings on different topics. And I'm wondering where we can go from here. Again, it's more about the journey, and that journey is always changing. It's always moving. It's always evolving. It is our choice to allow it to be so, and our choice to gently and beautifully nudge it along. That's what actually creates. And I am just so honored and so delighted that you join me in that journey. Big hugs to all of you wherever you are. And as always, you can reach out to me at lauren@laurenpolly.com. Have an amazing week, and I will chat with you next Tuesday.